Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We are going to just do a very brief touch-in on continuing our launches for Mars this episode, plus a few other things. So this is another resupply pod, kind of a standard affair at this juncture, so that's why all of this is going to be sped up. Just a quick check on life support stuff, which will kind of allude to what we're getting onto next. But DN6B, this is actually the old version. It does not have the upgraded boosters, thus the 1.0 something 8 maybe thrust to weight ratio off the pad. This is probably going to be the last of this series to fly without the upgraded boosters that go to the RD-172 engine as opposed to the 171. It just means a lot of going back and pulling rockets out of storage, swapping the engines out, and then putting them back in storage, waiting on their respective launch windows or for them to be needed. Most of them are resupply missions, either that were intended for Tremonia Station in orbit of the Moon, Rosalina Memorial Station on the Moon's surface, Harmonia Station in orbit of Mars, which I think we've finally gotten the last bit of resupplies in preparation for our next launch window, in which a crew will be heading out there, hopefully on top of a new Perseus vehicle that we have yet to finalize. I guess we should probably get to doing that, but we got 2 years, so not that it's a huge ordeal. Boosters are off and away, and fairing sep. Problem. This is supposed to have a heat shield for aero capture. Stuck right there on the top, and it's not there. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if maybe I reconfigured a special set of pods intending to use them for Venus, or if maybe I was just like, I'll use one of these, take the heat shield off of it, and send it to Tremonia, which the thought crossed my mind upon doing this launch, since we're going into a plane with the Moon anyway, that maybe just shipping it over there would be better. But we kind of need it to go to Mars, and we're going to be outside of the window if we take the time to roll out another vehicle. And plus, I may have duplicated this without knowing it. I did not make a note in the name of the vehicle that this was different or intended for anything not Mars. I mean, really, I have left heat shields at full ablator that go to Mars, and the full ablator ones we really only need to go to Venus. We could probably go with like a 1/10 of the ablator for Mars launch. There's our core stage down and away, so we'll actually just start to plot for Mars. We're going to go just normal flight on this one, although without the ability to aero capture. This is the L series of the B upper stage, so you see it has its own solar panels, its own radiators, so hopefully it will be able to mostly take care of a propulsive capture maneuver. I'm not sure. We've not really done it before, but with the mass savings on not having the heat shield, it's certainly a possibility that we'll have, I have no idea how much. Realistically, it'll be a couple hundred meters per second. Ideally, it would be about a kilometer per second of excess delta V left in the stage that we could use to start a capture maneuver around Mars. Of course, some of it's going to have to finish up from the actual resupply pod itself. This is a fuel pod, so it has gobs of delta V, but that does mean that's less fuel that we can bring to the station. It does also carry some life support, probably a couple of years worth for a crew of 3. Considering our next flight out is going to be a crew of 6. Of that, however, 4 will be spending the vast majority of their time on the surface, or at least a year, maybe more, depending on how well resupply drops go for that mission. And also the initial supply drops go. I think I had actually intended this one to be a life support pod and not a fuel pod, although this is, like I said before, mixed use. It has both. So really everything going exactly wrong for this mission, other than it being a rather textbook flight so far. It's the wrong vehicle, it's going to the wrong place, carrying the wrong stuff. Go figure. Alright, and we do not have an encounter with Mars. Just a quick little adjustment gets us one. It is incredibly brief, however, and a lot of fidgeting with the nodes to bring it down closer to where we want it. Ideally, it would be able to easily align planes with harmonious station, which we will target now, and then very badly swing our line around until we get something kind of worthwhile-ish. We'd like that periapsis and that ascending descending node to kind of line up and be close to the planet, ideally 170 meters per second for this one. I think we'll actually go ahead and light up the HG3. This is, again, the upgraded version, so it does have 5 ignitions, now 3 ignitions, and hopefully we'll only need 1 more of said ignitions to start our propulsive capture. We were way early on that node, and instead of it being just more efficient that way, it just turns out to be way less accurate. So we'll finish out these last few meters per second on RCS. We do have a whole lot of RCS fuel, as it burns the same fuels at a different mixture than our AJ10 118K that propels the actual supply pod itself, and for which we'll probably have to rely on quite heavily just to put this dumb thing in orbit, although I'm not opposed to skimming off the top couple of layers of atmosphere without a heat shield, just to see if it can't help us out a little bit. It's not going to affect the ISP of the engine very much, but it certainly can help give us a couple of dozen free meters per second on slowing down. So we're just going to have to transfer fuel back into the B upper stage to make sure we can utilize all of our thrusters, of which we're using a not insignificant amount of fuel to try to bring this course someplace close to where we want it. Of course, nothing really wants to cooperate with me today, so it does act a little wonky, and it keeps trying to overcorrect for itself. So there's a lot of fighting whatever the ship was trying to do versus what I wanted it to do. But yeah, like this here, that was all me just not hitting a button and seeing if it was ever going to stop just firing those thrusters for pretty much no reason at all. Trying to reset the trim did pretty much nothing to make this not happen, which was a little distressing. But all in all, we did eventually get to something that was relatively close. Not nearly as close as I'd like, and the inclination is a little wonky, but if we can manage to insert ourselves into a high enough orbit, or a eccentric enough orbit, really, I guess is the term I'm looking for, then we should be, generally speaking, okay to okay-ish. And once again, we'll have to transfer more fuel into the B upper stage and plot ourselves another maneuver just to bring that periapsis down. We'll add an alarm with a 10-minute buffer. That's a 13 meters per second correction much later on, which will be easy enough for us to figure out and bring ourselves in pretty close to the station. Turning our attention now to other things, we will rejoin our Artemis crew out here at our friendly neighborhood rock, neighboring asteroid, Juicy, also known as Boris. We never gave it an official name, I guess, although however you want to refer to it, I'm sure is fine. We've got a lot of extra fuel here in the Artemis, so we're actually going to dump some of it off with our initial exploration probe. Why not? It can burn through all of that fuel and adjust the orbit of the asteroid by just a little bit, maybe a meter per second-ish, provided that engine doesn't fail, which undoubtedly it will. At some point, I think we've already pretty much maxed out its runtime just coming into this, although maybe not. We did dump a lot of that fuel through the thrusters trying to make rendezvous, and we will now collect our crew and make sure that they are all safely aboard the spacecraft. They're down to something like 40 days of life support supplies remaining, so I just want to make sure that we can bring them home with plenty of margin for error in case something goes tragically wrong and they end up drifting in space for a few weeks. This is a highly eccentric orbit, although it's going to be a little gentler than coming back from the moon, which is only a little further out than the highest point of this rock, so well, we know it's nothing Artemis can't handle. It's come back from Mars in a very similar configuration, and an identical vehicle is on its way back from Mars currently, so no worries on that front. crew should be fine. I just have to make sure that I get the reentry angle down correctly. So after a lot of transferring of supplies, we're going to put a little bit of life support and a little bit of fuel into the habitat module, which is going to stay attached to the rock for the time being in preparation for whatever next unlucky crew gets to come out here and pretend to do science on it. I think we've actually scraped off all the science we can get from it. Really, the only other thing we could get from this thing is mining equipment, fuel, and resources and the like. So we will undock, we will steer ourselves clear of the asteroid itself before lighting up our surface propulsion engine and making a quick burn to bring our periapsis down to something not quite that low. Oh Jesus, no, not quite that low. We'll just touch that up on thrusters, bring it around to 50 kilometers or so, and arm all of our parachutes, because this way I won't forget, although I will probably get panicky and check later, and then warp on through until we're coming up on making our reentry. And at this point, well, we've got like 1,400 meters per second of fuel left in our service module, which, I mean, there's no point in wasting all of it, just letting it burn up into the atmosphere. So we'll dial ourselves into roughly retrograde and light it up. We'll have to aim a bit high, trying to make sure we don't push our periapsis too low into the atmosphere so that we screw things up and burn up and die. We'll try to level it out right around 55-ish kilometers. I feel like that's a good place where we can come back safely. We'll stage off the service module, nudge it a few times, making sure to scratch a couple of worthwhile dents into our heat shield, just in case the crew wasn't on their toes enough, before getting ourselves angled in for reentry. We'll just watch it slowly drift away there. It'll eventually hit the atmosphere and go terribly wrong. You can still kind of see it there off to the distance. So we'll turn descent mode on. There goes the service module very quickly. And we'll start our reentry procedure in earnest. The awesome flames of slowing downiness. We will actually slow our descent down to start traveling back up, in which case the crew will initiate a very nice slow roll maneuver, flip themselves upside down, and then start to push themselves back down into the atmosphere. This works a whole lot better than turning descent mode off, which causes it to wobble and maybe end up face up, which would be horrible in these circumstances. So after descending again, they will roll back into the upright position. Now they're only going to climb up to about 65 kilometers, so we'll just go ahead and keep it in this configuration. That'll help ease the G loading off the crew, although it does kind of make for a nice skip, pushing us all the way up to almost, well, yep, 70 kilometers is now our apoapsis, although at some point that's going to start falling back down again as we continue to decelerate, still at 6.2 kilometers per second, which, after having shed off enough speed to guarantee that we're not going to have to make another lap, I'd say that's not too bad. 70.5 kilometers, we'll come back down low enough to start the heating up again. Just a quick check on where we are. Yeah, somewhere in the South Pacific. Not too bad. Nighttime, though. I do very much prefer daytime landings, just they look better, but all things considered, it's really not the end of the world. I'm sure the crew is exceedingly happy to be back home. They've been on station for almost a year now. A bunch of wiggling and tossing while we're waiting for our drogue chutes to deploy. There they go. They'll start to peg out the G meter and slow the crew down so they can have a nice, happy, safe, slow enough touchdown to not flatten them into the seats, which helps our insurance premiums a great deal, actually. Getting down to about 3 kilometers now. The primaries will go at about 1 kilometer altitude, and that will take care of the rest of the slowing downiness for crew safety and survival. They are deployed now. They'll go into full deploy here in just another couple hundred meters. There they go. All chutes in full deploy. 3.8 meters per second as our total speed, as I will use physics warp to speed through as much of this as humanly possible, considering it's absolutely nothing fantastic to look at all. And there's splashdown and a quick recovery. Alright, what did we get here? 302 science. Not bad, I guess. I don't know. I guess I thought we'd get a lot more. 60 science for the sample return in space while near Earth. Laser, a bunch of these got us nothing, but I think that's because I radioed them in and I collected a sample to bring back physically. Yeah, a whole lot of this, nothing. So, 72 science for the multispectral scan. Well, in space near. Oh, Kopernicus asteroid, not near Earth, so I don't think we could have doubled up on that one. So realistically, I think our haul from this was probably 500 total science. We just got some of it earlier. And yeah, both the samples were worth about 60 science apiece. That's not bad. 4 grand back in parts, crew, and really, no XP gain for all 3. Oh, bummer. I guess they don't count as a thing. Well, sorry y'all. Nobody cares about your achievement. That's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.